Hi Year 5, so today we are on to Thursday's reading session and we are going to be doing a short comprehension today, just a few questions from this chapter. I'm going to read a few pages for you as normal and then there will be time for you to do your independent read, okay? Chapter 14. The ship wasn't far away and it didn't take long to find it. It was frozen at an angle on the ice, looking pale and ghostly in the moonlight, with a prow rising into the sky, its shredded sails hanging in tatters, and gaping holes showing through the rotted crumbling wood. Cold and still in the starlight, it seemed like a dead thing, a husk, a ghost ship. "Wow," Shea said. "That is extraordinary." He turned to grin at the others. "Isn't being an explorer just the best thing in the whole wide world? Ever!" Everyone agreed that the ship was magnificent, but the problem was it wasn't stuck in the middle of a vast, flat expanse of ice as they had expected. At first Stella thought it was perched on the edge of a cliff, but then she saw that there was no cliff. It was a wave that had frozen at its highest peak. A ladder ran all the way up the ship's hull, but the rungs sparkled with ice, and the whole thing looked a bit precarious. "Do you think it's safe?" Ethan asked, peering at it suspiciously. "The wave is frozen solid," Shea replied. "It'll be fine. Besides, it looks like this is our only option." They quickly put up their one tent, which was only just large enough to shelter the animals, and then the four explorers took one of the mountain climbing ropes and tied it around their waists to form a chain. Shea was in the front, then Stella, followed by Ethan, and finally Beanie. "Beanie, put Aubrey away," Stella said, noticing that he had the wooden narwhal clutched in his hand. "You can't climb the ladder if you're holding that." After checking that the knots were securely tied, they took hold of the frozen rungs and carefully made their way up the side of the ship. It hadn't seemed so high from the ground, but now that Stella was up there, she thought it seemed very high indeed. Dizzyingly high, in fact, and she had to force herself not to look down as she climbed, one hand over the other, and prayed that she wouldn't slip on a frozen rung and break her neck. After what seemed like forever, Shea reached the top of the ship and scrambled over the side. She heard a thud as his snow boots hit the deck, and then his hands were reaching over to help her on board. Stella didn't think she'd ever felt so glad to feel solid ground beneath her feet. Together, she and Shea helped Ethan up over the side. "Well, that was a long," he began, but that was as far as he got before the rope suddenly went taut, as Beanie slipped off the ladder behind him. His weight dragged the magician back into the railings with a thump, and then flipped him backwards right over the edge. The force of their combined weight dragged Shea and Stella across the deck, but they both slammed into the hard railings. Stella braced her boots against them and gritted her teeth against a strain in her arms as she grabbed hold of a rail. Shea did the same, and they just about managed to avoid being pulled over the other side with the others. Stella could hear Ethan and Beanie both kicking up a tremendous fuss as they were swung to and fro at the end of the rope, dangling helplessly above the vast drop spread beneath them. "Lord Rupert Randolph Rutledge!" Beanie gasped, plunged to his death as his teammates cut the rope in order to— "I'll cut the rope on you if you don't shut up!" Ethan snapped, before yelling to the others, "For goodness sake, pull us up!" "Give us chance!" Shea shouted back. Together he and Stella carefully got to their feet, gripped the rope and pulled it until Ethan reached the top at once. Shea grabbed his cloak and hauled him over the side before doing the same for Beanie. The four of them gasped for breath as the wooden deck creaked beneath their boots. Ethan rounded on Beanie at once. "What's the matter with you?" he snarled. "What kind of explorer can't even climb a ladder?" "I'm sorry," Beanie said. He had the wooden narwhal clutched tightly in his hand. "Aubrey started to slip out of my pocket, so I had to let go of the ladder too." "You're joking!" Ethan fixed him with a cold, grey stare. "You must be. You're not seriously telling me that you endangered your life and mine over a wooden toy?" "It's not just a toy," Beanie protested. He never got to finish his sentence because Ethan snatched the narwhal from his hand. Before anyone could stop him, tossed it over the side of the ship. One moment it was there, and the next it had gone, swallowed by the vast rock below. There was a moment of silence. Beanie stared numbly into the direction of the vanished narwhal, and then he untied the rope around his waist, turned without a word to anyone, and walked off to the covered bridge, closing the door behind him quietly. The next moment Stella flew at Ethan. She simply couldn't help herself. Using her hands and feet, she kicked and punched at him maliciously. The magician tried to fend her off, but the rope tying them together made it impossible to get away from her. Finally, Shay grabbed her around the waist and dragged her bodily away. It's time for you to read your independent part for me now, so that it can help you with answering the comprehension questions and also with your writing for today.